Okay, give me 1 second. We're going to get back over so we can see what's going on. So, all right, all right. Now we're gonna give it a little bit for a couple to see who comes on tonight. Lon, 18 inches of snow out by you, Lon? Here we didn't really get much of anything. Oh, you saw him up there, huh? Yeah, he's back. He's back. Actually, there's a whole story behind that. I was actually screwing around with one of my friends because they were telling me that the rabbit was actually crooked. In the picture, it looks a little crooked, but the realistic part is that it's not really crooked. We were just screwing with him. And then what I did is I actually pulled it all the way over one time, so it really was crooked, and they didn't say anything about it. So good to see everybody. I see a bunch of people probably got the notification that we're on tonight. I wasn't sure if I was going to be doing it, but we are here, and I don't know how long we're going to be on for. Winter, as everybody knows, is officially arrived here. It's mighty cold out there. I took my dogs for a walk tonight, and being that they're long-haired dogs, they weren't cold at all. They just wanted to keep on walking. So I see we have a lot of people over here. I guess a lot of you get the notification. So I see my buddy Hayward's here. So a couple of things we're going to talk about. I did get a couple of things that were sent to me. I'm not going to show you everything that was sent to me because I did get a lot of stuff sent to me. As you know, I wasn't on for a while, but I do have a lot of stuff that I want to go over with you. I have a lot of merchandise that was sent to me by different companies, and I told them I'd at least show it on my live stream. And if I like it, I'm actually going to, I'll demonstrate how to use it as well. 2 feet of snow, 7 degrees. Oh, you're in Rochester. Yeah, well, definitely. I know you got blasted up there. But down here, actually, as everybody knows, I'm in South Jersey. So down here, all we have down here it was rain. I took my dogs for a walk, probably, I'm going to say around 9, 10 o'clock this morning, and it was probably 50 degrees out there. And then tonight when I took them for a walk, it was probably all of about, well, with the wind blowing, it feels like it's really below zero, but it's really not. I'm going to guess it's probably in the 20s, something like that. But I know tonight it's going down where just about everything is going to freeze. I see my buddy Joe is over here. Good to see you, Joe. I hope everything is okay with you. I know it's cold as heck down at your shop. Everybody knows I was down to visit Joe. Not last week, I think it was the week before. I paid a visit on Joe, and finally I delivered on a promise that I made him probably 6 months or a year ago. We were talking one time, and I was talking about the shirts that I had made up, and I told Joe that I was going to drop him off one. Well, it took me a while, but at least I got the shirt down to him. I can't wear it this time of the year, but now at least he's got it. So I do have a couple of things I'm going to show you, like I was telling you. One of them is pretty neat. As you know, when you're really windy or you have a storm or whatever, sometimes your power goes down. Whatever, flashlight or whatever. But I got this thing, they call it a power generator. It's really, I don't consider it a generator, but it's actually it's this thing here. It's actually it's not a generator, but you can use it as a 110 volt outlet where you can plug something into it. I will during the week get into my shop here at home, and I'll show you how it works. You can charge your cell phone through here. It has lights on it, so you can actually light it up. It's got an adapter here for a cigarette lighter, but I will show you how it works, and we'll test it out. And with this here, this comes in pretty handy because when my kids were younger, we used to do a lot of camping. And when we did a lot of camping, we used to have something like that just so we could hang up in the woods a fluorescent light. So that way, as you know, it gets really dark in the woods, especially, middle of the night. But with that, it was pretty neat because you could just flip a switch and you could turn the lights on and you could actually see, a path all the way up. So it would come in handy, lighting up a path or whatever. If your power was to go down, you'd have some kind of lights. So that's one thing. This is the box that actually it came to me in. That's the box that it came in. I hope you can see it okay. But I will take it in my garage over here one day, and I will write up a little review on it. I'll show you it actually working. So let's see what we got going on over here. I see a bunch of people popped in here. I see Joe and Karina. Good to see you in there. Hope everything is good with you guys. It's cold as heck here, and hopefully you didn't get too much snow where you are. Kubo, good to see you. John, good to see you as well. Bill. Oh boy, 8 inches of snow, huh? In Wisconsin. Well, all I can say about that 8 inches of snow out there, it's better in Wisconsin than it is here in New Jersey. I hate the snow. Nothing worse than being in the shop and working. And anybody who's a mechanic will tell you this is it's the most horrible part of the job. When you're working, you get a car out there through the snow, and you get all the slush and everything else up underneath the bottom there. It really gets kind of messy. But you bring it into your shop, bring it into a warm environment, and as soon as you bring it in, it just starts to drip all over the place. And there's nothing worse than working underneath the car and the water is dripping down your neck, or you're looking up to do something that's dripping in your face, But you get used to it after a while too, so it's not so bad. My buddy Nat, I see you're in here. Yep, Shop Talk is back for a freezing evening. Yep, it's actually pretty cold, but I think Nat, you're north of here, so you're just as cold up there. So hopefully we just get the cold and not the snow. 7 years in New York, yeah, the winters are horrible. Nothing worse than, what I do at the shop is, because I have 4 spots that I actually have cars that I can put in, and what I do is in where the lifts are, I have like a staging area, I guess you'd say, where you could pull the car in and park it, and the heater blows right on top of it. So I always bring a car in, I leave it sit there for whatever period of time I'm working on another car, so that way when I finish working on the car or the lift, I can then take the car and bring it up and put it up on the lift to work on. And hopefully most of the snow and salt and everything has dripped off of it. So, but that's the fun of the winter. So I know there's a bunch of people over here talking, but yeah, nothing like eating the salt, that's for sure. There's nothing worse than you're underneath the vehicle working and you look up and the way there's a drip right in your eye every time. All right. Before I went on, I did get an email from one of my subscribers who had a problem, and I don't know if they're here. I'm not going to say their name because they sent me an email and it wasn't in the YouTube. So, but they're having a problem with the 2008. I'm going to read to you what it says. What it is, it's how to replace the lock actuator on the 2008 Honda CR-V. It says, "Thanks, Jim. Very helpful video. I had the same situation where 3 screws stripped out. I want to ask, what drill head did you use? Any size? I'm afraid to make a damage to the holes. Thank you." Well, that you got to be real careful with. The problem is, Wyatt, good to see you. I see you're here tonight too. The problem is when the lock actuator screw, those 3 screws on the Honda, the CR-Vs, they're really a pain in the what to get them out, because they actually put some kind of a Loctite on there. So when you try to take them out, you could try getting it out with the impact. You can try getting it out with an electric screwdriver or whatever. They're just very difficult. Other times you'll try to take them out and they'll actually just snap right off. So you do have to be careful with that. But if they do break, it's not a big deal. If they do snap off, first, before you start doing anything, you want to make sure you get to a dealership and get new screws, because if you're going to drill these screws out, you can't put any screw back in there except the screw that except the screw that belongs in there, because the screws, as you know, they're tapered specifically for that hole. So make sure you got the screws first in hand. Once you get the screws in hand, what I always do is I never go in there with a real big drill bit. Take the screw, you look at the threaded area of the screw itself. You got to look at the thread, and it's going to be probably around a 1/4 inch. I guess than a 1/4 inch. You want to use something small. What I always do whenever I drill something out, I get in there with a very small drill bit, 1/16 of an inch or an eighth of an inch. I just want to say this. I don't know if it's freezing up for everybody, but every now and then the whole thing freezes over here. So if you lose something I say, just let me know and I'll repeat it again. But you want to get in there and you want to drill that hole very small. You want to drill it with probably like maybe an 1/8 inch, and you want to dead center. You want to drill it. So you get in the center, you drill a hole 1/8 of an inch, you drill it through. You're not going to go all the way. You're only going to go in about maybe a 1/4 of an inch, enough that you can get in there and you can actually drill past the tapered part. And then you'll come in there with that 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch or 3/16, and get in there and you'll drill and be able to, as you're drilling, you're going to get to a point where you're going to be drilling and then all of a sudden it's going to do the head of the bolt, the tapered part of the Phillips head is just going to snap right off. So what you want to do is you want to drill dead center first with a real small 1/8 inch drill bit, and then come in there with a larger drill bit, the 1/4 inch, to actually get the head drilled off of it. And remember, you're throwing away the lock itself underneath because the lock is no good. So it doesn't really matter if you drill in a little bit too far and damage anything inside. The main thing is you don't want to damage the part of the door where the taper part of the screw goes into, you know. So you could tell I'm Italian because I have to talk with my hands at the same time. All right, so I hope that helps you out. Keep me posted. Let me know how it works out for you if you got it out. Hopefully you can. Okay, one other thing I want to show you too. Let me just go back here and see what we got going on here. Why you saw I actually made you a blue wrench, so I appreciate if you see anything pops up. And Joe and Karina, I see I got you as a blue wrench also, so just in case something happens to pop up, you could take care of it for me. My garage is in Bayonne. 5 outside right now, just waiting for the lunar eclipse. That's right. Nat, I was going to mention that. I came back from a walk with my dogs, and I told my wife and my daughter that tonight's going to be a good night for that lunar eclipse. So I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's around 10:30. So it should be interesting. You know what, Wyatt? You're right. I've seen Cuba, and before I can even read it, it's already deleted. So Cuba, if it's okay with you, I'll put you as a moderator as well. Bayonne, New Jersey. Somebody actually said something to me. What did they say? Somebody said to me, this is Sam, I won't say his last name, Sammy. He sends me an email. He says to me, accent. He said, East Coast mechanic. And I'm thinking to myself, accent? What do you mean accent? What accent? I don't have an accent. Okay. The other thing I wanted to show you too is, and you know what, Wyatt, I think you've had one of these too. I seem to remember you had one of, maybe it wasn't this particular item, but I think you had a scan tool made by this company called Top Don. They actually send a lot of equipment out to the different shops and different people on YouTube. Well, Top Don sent me this tool, and actually I do like it. It's a little bit smaller than the one that I normally use. Give me 1 second. I'll bring it up here. I'll show you what it looks like. I'm just opening up the case. And I will tell you this. This is the brochure for it that comes with it. Obviously, it tells you everything that you can do with it. Very simple. You read through it step by step. It's very easy. But this is the tool right here. It's for diagnosing the charging system. You can load test your battery to see if your battery is in good condition. You can check your, from what it says, you can check your output on your alternator. You can check your diode ripple to make sure that the diodes are functioning correctly. And it actually is, you can even print the information if you wanted to print it for a customer or for future reference for yourself. So that one I did look at it. I did turn it on. I did play with going through the different things on it. It works just like the one I have at the shop now, except it's much smaller. So I'm going to keep this one here at home for now. And I think I will do a video on that one, actually. I'm going to do a video. Maybe I'll go out in the garage and I'll check the battery on one of my trucks or something like that. And we'll see how the actual unit it works. We'll check the output. And we'll check the reserve capacity of the battery and all that kind of stuff. The most important thing, as you know, is the reserve um, even a battery that's 100% charged at 80 or 90 degrees, you bring a battery like that out into the cold where it's 0 degrees, and you're going to probably have half, if not less, of the power out of it. So, it's good because this way you'll know before the battery dies if the battery is good or no good or whatever. Let's see. I'd like to see the tool in action. You know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to actually, I'll go out in my garage and, I'm going to keep that one here, but I will do a little video on how it actually works. And, Top Down, as you know, is a fairly decent tool. It's not really junk. All right. So that's the two I'm going to show you today. Like I said, I have a whole bunch of other stuff out there too. I got so many of the lights sent to me. I don't even know what to do with them. So I'm actually just getting rid of them. I'm not even gonna show them out to you guys because there's just so many out there. I did get another tool that I'm actually gonna maybe I'll show it on my next live stream too. It's pretty decent. It's actually it's two of them. One of them is with the temperature changing like this and the temperature going down, air pressure is crucial on tires. So you need to check the air pressure periodically to make sure that the pressure is up. You have a tire out there at 70 degrees, 80 degrees out there, and it drops down to 0. For every 10 degrees in temperature that it goes down, you're going to lose 1 pound of pressure. So if you have a tire that's fully inflated, at 70 or 80 degrees, the temperature drops down to 0, that tire is going to lose 7 or 8 pounds of pressure. Basically what this is, it's an air to fill the tire back, an air gauge to fill it back up. What I like about this one is there's 2 different ways you can use it. And I'll do a video on that one as well because I do like it. You can actually plug it into your accessory port or your cigarette lighter and power the tool up like that. It's a handheld unit with just a trigger pull on it. And when you pull the trigger, obviously it turns the pump on and you can monitor the pressure in the back of it and all that kind of stuff. So, I will do a video on that as well. But the ones I'm going to do the video first on are going to be these 2 right here. Maybe during the week I'll try to get it done. So I'll get them up during the week so that you guys can actually see them in use. All right, let's see what I'm missing in here. I want to go back a little bit. What do we got going on? It's good to see so many people back here. After not being on for a while, I kind of didn't expect to see a bunch of people on here. You got Joe. Yeah, Joe, you're right. Cuba's a ninja. I think that's what Eric said. I've heard him say that. Full eclipse. Yep, it's going to be interesting to see. I don't know if 10:30. Get your camera ready. It should be interesting. When I was walking my dogs tonight, the moon was actually very, very bright. So I can't see it now, but usually I can see it out over here. But that should be interesting to see that tonight. It's mighty cold out there, so I'm not sure. All right. Wyatt says I have the Top Down battery checker, but not a high. Oh, okay. I didn't realize that it was the Top Down. I did see the video, but I don't recall if it was the battery checker or if it was a scan tool. Let's see. Oh, I got my buddy Vinny in here too. Haven't talked to Vinny in a while. I know Vinny's probably freezing out there as well. Okay. Super Mario, good to see you in here. All right, I had a couple of other things that people had questioned. Sorry. I've seen, I have a couple of other people, I'm sorry, I got distracted. Somebody said something, I just looking at it. Okay. Joe's about a week or 2 ago. Now Joe's garage, it's tremendous inside that garage. You could probably fit my shop, 4 of my shops into one of his into one of his shops. So his shop is really big. Plus, he got. I think the way he got me to come down there is he told me he had that 1970 Mustang that he had in there, and I wanted to see it. That's probably why I stopped down over there. Okay, there was a couple of. I got an email from, and this is going back probably a week or two ago. Somebody sent me an email and says to me, "What was the first car that I ever owned?" The first car I ever owned was a 1966 F85 Oldsmobile. I don't know if anybody even remembers those cars. That was one of my first cars. That was my $300 car. As soon as I had the car before I even had my license. I bought the car, I think probably a couple of months before I had my license, and it wound up sitting out there waiting for me to get my license so I could drive it. But it was a 1966 F85 Oldsmobile, 4-door, 330, 4-barrel carburetor. And I remember that car was extremely, extremely quick. What we got going on? Pizza Joe's shop. Yep. You probably remember the F85 Oldsmobile. That was a good car. I actually bought that car from from somebody else I knew. The ignition switch wasn't even in the dashboard anymore. Somebody had stolen the car and they broke the dash, because back then the switch was in the dashboard. So you put the key in the dashboard and you turned it to start it. And the way I got the car so cheap is because somebody had stolen the car, broke the dashboard where the ignition switch was supposed to fit into, and so the switch was just dangling out through the dashboard. You had to hold this switch in your hand and start it, because where the switch was, there was a hole in the dashboard, probably about that big, that somebody had torn it apart. So that was my first car. I had that's when I was working for a guy. It's one of the first places I worked for was actually a Gulf station up in Jersey City Heights. I worked up there for probably after school for a year or two after school, pumping gas and learning how to be a mechanic. And then after that, that's when I bought my 73 Gran Torino. That was probably one of my favorite cars. But my favorite car that I ever had was a 1967 Mustang Fastback. That was probably my favorite car. But there was a lot of other cars after that as well. But that was my first car. What was my first car was the question they had for me. So it was a 1966 F85 Oldsmobile. What I initially wanted to do is I wanted to, to replace the dashboard and all that kind of stuff. But really, back then it really didn't pay, because I paid $300 for the car, and to buy a dashboard to put it in, it just didn't pay. So I actually just drove the car like that with the dashboard torn out and the ignition switch. You had to hold the switch just to get it to start. All right, now I had a couple of questions by some of my subscribers too. They wanted to know. This one here says, I can't pronounce the name, so I'm not even going to try to. It says, good afternoon. I have a request. I have a Isuzu pickup, and it's problem power steering oil. Okay, it's a little bit choppy, but it says the problem with the power steering coming out of the cap automatically. Can you please give me some information why oil comes out during start? I already replaced the steering box pump, but still same fault. Thank you. I'm waiting for your response. There's really only a couple of reasons why fluid is going to come out of the box. One, obviously, is because if it was overfilled, because if you look on the side of the reservoir, you'll have a minimum, a maximum, and I've seen it already where people have actually taken the minimum and maximum and put it all the way up to the very, very top, and then you wind up with fluid leaking all over the place, because like anything, when it's cold, it tends to shrink. When it gets warmer, it expands. If it's not overfilled to the top, then you want to look at the fluid. And you want to see if the fluid looks like it's foamy. If the fluid is foamy, that means that air is somehow getting into it, and the air with the fluid, it gets aerated. And when the fluid gets aerated, it kind of expands a little bit, and it gets all over the place. So you want to, if I got a feeling it's probably going to wind up being aerated, because it's a very common problem when air gets into the power steering pump. The pump is pumping the air and the fluid, and it just kind of turns it into like a foamy type mess. So of course, when you shut it off, that foam is going to wind up coming out through the top and all over the place. So, and if that's the case, then you want to check for usually on your return line. There's usually a leak someplace where either a clamp is not tight enough, or an O-ring is bad, or something like that, where it's actually pulling air in through the through the line. There's actually a couple of problems out there with Hondas in particular, which I do have another person that asked me about the Honda. But Hondas are notorious for having that problem. Hondas have a bad O-ring on the one tube on the return. And what happens is when the fluid is being sucked through, it's pulling it through, but it's also pulling air at the same time. The air comes in and mixes with it, and you wind up with a problem. So that, if it was me, that's what I would do. First thing I would do is check to make sure it's not overfilled. If it's overfilled, you want to take some fluid out. If it's not overfilled, you want to check the power steering return line specifically, to make sure that there's not pulling air in through the return line. Because the pressure, obviously, when you turn the wheel, the pressure is pushing out the other direction. So it'll definitely be on the on the suction side. Okay, next question we have is somebody. Actually, they say they will be listening. This is I'm not going to mention the last names. It's Brenna. My name is Brenna, and I am changing my brake pads and rotors for the first time by myself. From your video, it seems really doable, but I do have one question. I was told that you have to bleed the brakes before changing them. Is that true? I didn't see that in your video, but people have been telling me it's a critical step. And then they say, thank you for your super helpful videos, and looking forward to hearing you soon. To answer your question, no, you don't need to bleed the brakes on your vehicle before you do the brakes. The only reason why you would have to bleed the brakes is if you were changing a brake line or a brake caliper, or you had some kind of a failure in the system that you had to open the hydraulic system. If you didn't open the hydraulic system, there is no way that air could have gotten in there. Most likely what they're talking about is they're probably talking about not bleeding the system, but you want to crack, yeah, and you don't have to do this. They're probably talking about cracking the bleeder valve open and pushing the piston back in and getting that dirty fluid out. A lot of people say you have to do that. You really don't. What I normally do is just like in the video, you get in there with a small little tool, a pry bar, whatever, and you push the piston back into the bore. When you push the piston back into the bore, that'll actually reset the piston, and there's no reason to do anything as far as bleeding it, because you're not gonna get any air in the line unless you had a bad caliper or something like that. What they're most likely talking about, it is a good idea periodically to bleed the brake fluid out, and the reason for that is because the condensation is no good. So after you do the entire brake job, you don't have to, but you could finish the brake job, pump the brake pedal up, get a nice solid pedal where the pedal is back up on top, hard again, and then you can have your assistant help you bleed the brakes to get some of that fluid out. But it's not something that you have to do. That's more like just a maintenance item that's usually performed. Okay, what do we got going on here? We got a couple of people over here. I just want to see I'm not missing anything. Okay. Okay. Here's another question from one of my subscribers. This is a Byron S. They ask, great video, very informative. The only thing I did differently was I used my cordless 1/2-inch impact to break the pump bolts loose and install them. You almost got some busted knuckles there breaking it loose. There's a reason why The reason why I don't use an impact gun, and the particular car that they talked about was a Cadillac, and it was I believe it was a Cadillac. It was replacing the water pump on a Cadillac. They have 10 millimeter bolts on them. The 10 millimeter bolts actually go in the cover around the outside of it. The problem is those 10 millimeter bolts, they start to oxidize. Um, the the bolts oxidize, and it's just like rusting, and they rust into the housing. And if you get in there with an impact gun, you try to hit it with the impact gun, a lot of times you'll just snap that bolt right off. So you want to be real careful with that. 135,000 miles. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why I don't use an impact gun to try to take bolts out or even to put bolts back in. I like doing it by hand because over the years, there's nothing worse than a bolt breaking off and you have to try to drill it out, especially when you're talking about you have a cover on there, and probably 8 or 10 of those bolts in there are all oxidized or pitted or corroded of some sort. Um, that's why I never use an air gun on it. I would rather snap it loose by hand, because when you're pulling it by hand, you can feel if that bolt is going to break. And then if you're trying to pull it up and you can feel it's really too tight, you stop what you're doing before it breaks. Make sure you get some penetrating oil on there. Let it soak in there and loosen up. And, wait the extra time for the penetrating oil to work, because broken bolts are really a pain, especially when you're down in a really tight area and you need to get in there with a 90-degree drill to try to drill out a broken bolt. Drilling out a broken bolt is really a pain. If the engine is here and you're trying to get down here and drill in at a perfect angle, it's hard to see that drill is going to be exactly in the right area. So that's why I take it off by hand and I put them on by hand. Truthfully, I don't think I've ever. No, maybe I did. I can't say that. I remember some of the older cars, the Chevys. I used to shoot them off with air, but that was different. That wasn't the 10 millimeter bolts back then. They were 9/16, so the bolt itself was a regular 3/8 bolt versus a little 1/4 inch bolt. So back then, I would shoot them off because they were really pretty thick bolts. But today, I don't do that. And putting them back in, the exact same thing. I don't. I don't do it with an air gun. I always do it by hand. That kind of stuff, which is true. They are adjustable, but there's nothing worse than breaking a bolt off, and then it kind of ruins your day and kind of slows the whole process down of trying to get the cars in and out. As you know, my shop is usually pretty busy, and it's basic maintenance stuff that I do. A lot of in and out the same day. The car comes in the morning, get the car done, it goes out the same day. Most of the time, the cars are never in my shop overnight. They come in the morning, finish them up, and then right out the door. All right, this is the other one here. This is Benny B. I'm not going to say last name, but the X. It's a 2004 Honda Accord. The last mechanic. Oh, okay, this is different. I thought it was something else. 2004 Honda Accord. The last mechanic must have used channel locks to remove the oil drain plug, and now it will not come out. I saw your video on the tool you used to get it out. Can I get one from AutoZone? You probably can. The tool that I used on there was actually, I had gotten that from my tool distributor. We have these trucks that come to the shop, and I'm not going to mention any names, but it was one of the trucks that come to my shop, and I bought it off of there. And it's a whole kit that you buy. It's you could probably order it online. I'm sure nowadays you can get everything on Amazon or online. But what it is, it's a kit about this big. And what happens is when you have a bolt, I'll give you for instance, when you have a bolt or an oil drain plug that's perfectly round, no matter what you put on there, you could try getting on there with vice grips. And I've seen it before. And actually, this video that this fellow is referring to, they did use vice grips on it. And it was a Honda, and it was a 17 millimeter bolt. That 17 millimeter bolt was probably down to just slightly bigger than this pen, itself. That's how rounded off it was. It was perfectly round. But But this tool here, what you do is when you put this tool on there, it's reverse thread. So when you put this tool on, there's a whole kit. You find which one fits it tight. You put it onto it, and you just tap it on there until it goes on. And when you're tapping it on, you'll notice that instead of turning to the right to go on, you'll notice as you're tapping it, it's actually turning to the left or loosening the bolt itself. As you're tapping it in, the bolt itself starts to rotate. And then once you tap it in far enough where it's up against the oil pan itself, you can get on there with a ratchet or a wrench or whatever, and you'll be able to take it out. When you're pushing on it, what's happening is that tool is actually on the bolt that's rounded out, and it's actually pushing it in further. So as you're trying to take it out, instead of it sliding out, it's actually taking the bolt and rotating the bolt and pulling the tool tighter to get that out of there. So, that tool works phenomenal. I've used it. I can't even tell you how many times it's saved my rear end, because down where I am, we get a lot of people who are like this guy here with this Honda that told me that the last guy rounded it out. I know the last guy didn't round it out. I know he's a do-it-yourselfer, so he probably tried doing it himself and he rounded the bolt out. But it happens. And when you have this tool, you put it on there, it does take it out. I've tried other things too, where you'll get on there with a 12-point socket and you'll tap on a 12-point socket and it's fairly tight, and you try to turn it to take it out and the 12-point socket just skips around it. The thing that's good about this one is that it fits on real tight like that, but when you try to rotate it counterclockwise to take it out, the teeth on there actually, they're like grooves in there. They actually pull it in tighter, and instead of stripping, every time you turn it, it pulls it in tighter and tighter until you can break it and get it loose. And then, of course, you can throw it away. Obviously, you'll never use that over again. Ruggiero, I know. I think I had something in here from you. I think maybe I'm wrong. Okay. We're going to go back through some of this stuff here, and we're going to see what everybody's talking about. And if I'm ignoring anybody, twist lock sockets. I forget the name of it. I don't think they were made by Lyle or anything like that. I forgot what they were made by. But anyhow, they work really good. And you can go onto Amazon and you can find them on Amazon. Wait a second. Do the threads on the oil pan? Oh, you know what? I know about this. Do the threads on the oil pan drain? Do the threads on an oil pan drain on aluminum drain plug wear or fail from age? Yeah. You don't really see that very often. But truthfully, I've seen people already, not so much on the cars, but I've seen people that shoot the drain plug in with an air gun. And of course, that's just going to chew everything up dramatically. Snap-on. You know what? It was not Snap-on, but it was the other big trucks that come around. And I don't want to mention any names, but you know what? It doesn't matter. Either it was Matco or one of those other ones. I don't recall. I think it was Matco, truthfully, that I got it from, but I'm not 100% positive. Okay, I'm going to read back through here. I see a couple of things going on. I just wanted to talk about. Twist impact sockets. Yep. Oh, Blue Point. You know what? That was probably it, Harold. You're right. Because Blue Point is Snap-on, so maybe it was. I don't recall, but they worked really good. All right, we're going to talk about a couple other things. I have a couple of things we want to talk about because I've been promising people I'm going to discuss these problems with them, and I just haven't had a chance to. But this one here comes from Greg S. It says, "Hi, Jim. After seeing this video, I have decided to buy my struts and install them myself. I have probably watched your video at least 15 times now. On my 2008 Camry is on a jack stand. Thanks for your help with the video, Greg from Jackson. Can you give me any pointers before I start?" Yes. Couple of things I want to say. I'm hoping that you got struts that are actually what they call loaded struts. It comes with the springs on it. And the reason I say you want to get the struts with the spring on it is because if you buy the strut with the spring on it, you'll get the strut, you'll get the spring, and you'll get the bearing plate. It's very important because when the bearing plates fail, you'll have to take that whole strut back out again. And plus, you'll wind up having to take the strut to a shop or a parts store and have them switch over the springs for you. So hopefully you got hopefully you got the loaded struts. If you've watched the video 15 times, then I'm sure you probably are not going to have any problem whatsoever doing the job. It is a fairly, it's a time-consuming job, but there's nothing really beyond you doing it. It's pretty easy. The only thing I don't recall this one in particular, I think you had to pull the back seat out, if I'm not mistaken, the 2008 Camry. I think you had to pull the back seat out to do it. And then when you pull the back seat out and you pop the little side pieces off, there's the use a socket with a small little extension on it, or you may have to get in there with a small little ratcheting wrench, but it's really not that hard to do. It's pretty easy, so you shouldn't have any problem with it. And I will tell you this, if you do have a problem with it, send me an email. Don't send me it through the chat on the video itself. Just send it to my email. It's JSAuto10. No, I'm sorry. It's Jimthecarguy. Sorry, Jimthecarguy1@gmail.com. And those I usually see those. I usually see those more than I see all the stuff that comes through from the chat on the video, because truthfully, I get probably a couple of hundred a day, and a lot of times I really can't, or a lot of times I will just delete because there is so many of them. I can't read them all, and I can't read them all that way. But if you email it to me, most of the time I will be able to get back to you. All right, this one comes from another one of my subscriber. It's Icon Hulk. How to repair the door ajar light on a Ford Explorer, and he asks, this was I think that was a 98 Explorer, and he asks if the 2000 Ford Explorer Limited is going to be the same thing. Yes. What happens is the door ajar light on the dashboard stays lit. The interior light stays on. You won't be able to lock or unlock the vehicle itself, because what happens is the lock won't lock, and nothing will work because it still senses that the door is open. If a door is open, you can't lock it because the door, obviously is open. So what I would say is, don't even bother taking a look inside the door itself. It's so common that if you look in between the door itself, between the body of the truck and the door itself, you look inside there and you'll see a rubber snorkel. It's probably about 2.5 inches. All the wiring runs through that snorkel. Just take that, pull it back so that you can actually see all of the wiring inside there, because what happens is, from that constant, you have the wiring going through the door, and that constant closing and opening of the door, the wires bend just like any other wire bends like this. It'll just constantly keep on bending back and forth like that. When the wire bends back and forth like that, the rubber is very flexible. The problem is, inside the rubber, you'll have the copper inside there, and the copper is not flexible. After a period of time, that copper is going to start to fatigue, and it's going to break. So what you're going to do is you're going to open up the door itself. You're going to look for some signs of broken wires or wires just dangling in there. And if you don't see anything broken, just grab the wires in your hand and just take your finger, put your fingernail on the wire, and just run your finger across the wire and see if you feel any kind of an indent inside there, because the wire itself may be good, but inside there, the rubber part is still intact, but the copper may have broken. So, that's most likely what it's going to be. It's very, very common. Most of the time these cars come into me, I don't even do it. Don't even take the doors apart. But I will tell you this too: if you have a scan tool and you have the ability to scan the vehicle, if you put the scan tool on there and you go into the body control computer, you can actually watch the doors open and close, because obviously you have 4 doors on there, so you don't know which door your problem is in, whether it's in your driver's side door, which is where the problem is most of the time, the driver's side door. But, you want to definitely get inside the door itself and I'm sorry, give me one second. You want to definitely get inside the door. Cuba, I just realized you were in there, and if it's okay with you, I made you a moderator, if that's okay. Oop. Sorry, give me just one more second. I'm going to go back over here. Okay, beautiful. Okay, so you want to put the scan tool on. When you have the scan tool on it, you can actually get into the body control computer and you can scroll through it and you can see the driver's side door, the passenger side door, the rear door, and you can actually go and open and close the door and see what it'll say. You'll get in the scan tool and it'll tell you whether the door is ajar or if it's closed. So that'll give you a location, whether it's the driver's side or the passenger side or where the problem actually is. So, you definitely want to, if you can, scan it first, because otherwise you're going through 4 different places trying to find out where the break is. And you may be looking at the driver's side door and it could be the passenger side door. So if you have a scan tool or the ability to first before you can. If not, then unfortunately it's just going to be a guess. So, definitely see if you have a scan tool. There's so many of them out there that are very inexpensive, and if you can get into the body control computer, you'll be able to find out where the failure is actually taking place. All right, so here we got another one. It's a Simon L. Repair a power steering noise, 2003 to 2007 Honda. What they wanted to know is, thanks, bro. Will the O-ring temporarily fix the same problem on my Accord? Do you think the O-ring will work? Hope it could last 9 years more. Truthfully, Hondas, if well, you don't know for sure, but I mean, if you look on any kind of a TSB, Honda actually puts out a TSB regarding a problem with the O-ring. Like I was telling the fellow with the Isuzu, on the suction line, which is actually the fluid being returned back. What happens on this particular case is you have your line, your return line that comes in, and it's made of metal. It goes into the metal housing, and in between it is a rubber O-ring on that tube. When you put that in there, you may not see any fluid leaking out because it's pulling it in. And when it's pulling it, instead of pulling just fluid through the hose, it's pulling fluid, but it's also pulling air in through that spot as well. If it was on the pressure side and that O-ring was leaking, it would be squirting out, so you'd see it, at some point squirting across the room or whatever. But on the suction side, you really can't tell because it's pulling it in, and when it's pulling it, it's pulling air in too. So to answer your question, if you repair the O-ring, it really will take care of the problem, because the O-ring is a very, very common problem. Okay, what else we got going on here? A couple other things. I just want to get through these, and then we'll get back to talking about some of the stuff going on over here. Okay, here we go. This is I'm not even gonna try to pronounce this as Micah Hilo A. That's the name. How to replace the front brakes and rotors on the 2014 Dodge Ram. It says, hi, I have a 2016 Ram 1500. It's got 35,000 kilometers on it, so I'm assuming you're not in the United States. On it has a vibration when pushing on the brake pedal. What is this can be? Rotors and pads I bought for all 4, but when I check, it still has more than half thread left on the pads. Is this the front rotors? Is it just the front rotors? And which ones are good rotors to pick for a 1500? There's lots of different brands that you can buy out there. Most of the time, years ago, there was different qualities in rotors. There was a lot of Wyatt, good to see you, and I'm looking forward to it to the get together. Should be very interesting. So I will text you and we'll talk, of course. Before that too. Um, so what happens is there's lots of different brands of rotors out there. Um, Years ago, there was different qualities. If you bought I'm just throwing a name out there. If you bought a Wagner product, you had their high line and you had their low line, and there was different qualities and was really good. The rotors themselves had more ribbing inside of it. They were thicker metal. Today, everything out there is the lower end product, so it's hard to find something decent. But if you get a premium rotor from one of the stores, you should be in good shape. As far as the pulsating, the reason it's pulsating when you apply the brake, you get that pulsating feeling is because the rotor itself is slightly warped. You may not even be able to see it with your eye, of course, because it's just very, very, very little is it going to be off. But as the rotor is rotating, the brake caliper closes on the brake rotor. And as the rotor comes through where the brake pads are, as the rotor passes through, the rotor is wobbling very slightly. When it wobbles like that, it actually takes the piston and pushes the piston back into the bore. When it pushes the piston back into the bore, momentarily, it pushes it in, and then when it rotates out, it pushes it back. So that's why you'll get that wobbling type effect when you step on the brake. The rotor itself is at a round. I will tell you this, when you do take the brakes off there and you take the rotor off of the vehicle, absolutely imperative is when you pull that rotor off, whether it's the front or the rear, or if you're doing all four, on that hub where the rotor goes onto, make sure that rotor is sitting onto the hub is perfectly spotless. No rust, no foreign matter on there whatsoever. If there's even just a 64th of an inch of rust on there, when you put that rotor on there, it's going to wobble and you're going to be pulling your hair out trying to figure out what's going on. So make sure all the rust is off of the hub itself before you put the new rotors on, and you should be in good shape. Okay. Okay, what else we got here? Okay, I have to replace the front and rear brakes on a 2010 Honda Accord. Oh, okay. This one I kind of I want to explain this to you. This is a 2010 Honda Accord. It was front and rear brakes being replaced. But what they're asking me is, can I use a pry bar on the slot on the rear piston and turn it in like that? Will it work? I would not get in there with a pry bar. You get in there with a pry bar and try to turn it. And anybody who's a mechanic knows that when you have these pistons, there's a special tool that they make that you can put on there. The piston itself is so small. There's tiny little holes in the piston there. You're going to get in there with a pry bar and try to twist it. You're going to wind up doing more damage than good. Most of the time, these stores, the big box stores, when you buy brake pads or rotors or whatever you buy from the stores, most of the time they will lend you the tool to do the job. Get the right tool to do it, because when you try to turn that piston back in, you're going to get on that with that pry bar or whatever you're going to turn it. When you turn that in there, the problem is when you try to turn it, you have to watch the rubber boot around the outside, because if you're in there with a pry bar trying to twist it and get it to turn back in, you can't watch that rubber boot. And if you try to turn it, and if you by chance get to turn it, which I doubt you will, if by chance you got to turn it, the problem is that rubber boot is going to twist. And if that rubber boot twists on there, you're going to wind up destroying the rubber boot, the dust boot, and you're going to wind up getting dust and foreign matter in there, and you're going to prematurely wear out the seal inside there. So if you can't get the tool from the parts store to actually do it, you can get in there with like a needle nose pair of pliers and turn it in like that. Me personally, I would never do it like that. I would always use the proper tool for it. Even if you have to go out and buy a cheaper version to get that piston to turn back in, go out and buy it, because the worst thing you're going to do is you're going to put it all back together. You may damage the boot. 6 months from now, you're leaking brake fluid and you wind up changing that caliper. And as you know, those calipers are not cheap. You're looking at a couple of $100 for a caliper. So my advice is, don't go in there with a pry bar and play around with it. Buy the right tool for the right job, and you'll be in good shape. All right, a couple of more things, and then we're going to get over here and we're going to talk a little bit because I see a bunch of people in here that I know, and I know you guys are all talking back and forth to each other, which is good. Okay, this is from Terry K. I don't know if the print is smaller or these glasses are no good, but Terry says, thank you. How about opening the master cylinder to prevent any brake fluid overflow when you retract the piston, the caliper piston? Now, I will say this. It will fluid leak out. Sometimes it does. And the reason that the fluid leaks out is because a lot of times what happens is when you go into an oil change place or garage or whatever, sometimes they'll say to you, oh, your fluid is down. Would you like me to top it off and charge a few bucks to top off the fluid? The problem is when you top off the fluid and put too much fluid in there, even though it's up to the maximum line, if the brake pads had worn down, that piston was sticking out a little further than it was. And the problem is that you're going to wind up with too much fluid in there. So could you open up the cap? Yes, probably a good idea. Whenever I have my regular customers come to my shop and I know I'm the only one working on the car, I don't have to worry about that because I never top off the brake fluid in the car. If you're topping off brake fluid, that means either the brakes are no good or they're worn down or there's a hydraulic leak or something like that. So to off of the master cylinder, yes, you can. And then be prepared because you may wind up with fluid leaking all over the place too if somebody overfilled it. All right, one more, and I think we're going to be done with the questions for tonight. And this one comes from Derek M. I have an issue with my two. You know what? I cut half of this off, so give me 1 second. I'm going to go back. I think you know what? I'm not going to go back because I think I've lost it. Okay, I think this was if I'm not mistaken, it was a newer vehicle. I am going to go back because now this is going to bug me. This is going to bug me, so give me 1 second. I'm going to go back and I'm going to find out what that question was. Give me 1 second. This was Derek. You know what? I'm not sure. I can't see it in here. There's too many. All right. All right. But I got from what I recall, and this is Derek M. I just can't. I know it's a 2000 whatever vehicle, and they say what happens is I cut half of it off on the side over here when I printed it. But what they're saying is that they take the vehicle, they drive to the gym, they get out of the vehicle, and it wouldn't start again. They turned the key and nothing happened. Nothing happened. And it sat there for 45 minutes, turning the key, trying to get it to start, and it wouldn't start. Finally, they turned the key and it started up. But the thing that made me think about it was that they said that there's a slight clicking. They took the car back, the vehicle home, parked the vehicle. When they got home, oh, wait a minute, you know what? It was a Hyundai. I think it was a 2008 Hyundai, if I'm not mistaken. They turned the vehicle, they started the vehicle, drove the vehicle home, parked it in the driveway, tried to start it, they got a slight ticking noise. What I would do before you go crazy and try doing anything, you want to have the charging system checked. That particular vehicle, there is a problem with the alternator on that one. I've changed probably at least a dozen of them already. The alternators are bad on those vehicles where it's enough to keep the vehicle running, but it's not enough to charge the battery up. So what I would recommend doing is have the battery tested to make sure that the battery is good. If it's just clicking, chances are the battery is going to be no good. And especially if it's clicking and you try to start it, and then finally it kicks over, it's most likely going to be a bad battery. But have them test the battery and check the charging system because it's most likely going to be a combination of a battery and also the charging system is not charging. All right, let's see what we got going on over here, and then I think I'm going to call it night because I I think it's after 8 o'clock already. Yep, it is. I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to see what's going on. Super vacuum. Let's just go back and see. Anything that I should know about going on here, Joe, or Cuba? Anything I should know about? I know why it's gone already. Nat, I see you're still in there. What's going on? My buddy Nat's a caffeine drinker. Nat, I know we got to get together and have a burger and a beer. I know I did promise you that. And one day I will give you a call. I know I have your number in my phone. So as soon as I get caught up with stuff, we'll get together and maybe we'll get a couple of people together and we'll go down to have a couple of beers. Yeah, I wish I was in Florida. Okay, everything looks good? Very good. All right. Okay. All right. I just want to thank everybody for stopping by tonight. And any other questions anybody has, send me, if you could send me the questions to the Jimthecarguy1@gmail.com. That's the best way to ask me a question because, as I said, a lot of times I get these notifications on here, and I'll turn my computer on and I'll see something like page after page after page of questions. The problem is I don't look through all of the questions up here. I actually will respond quicker to the sending it directly to my Gmail. Yep, Jimthecarguy1@gmail.com. Yep, no trolls on Jim's chat, just gearheads. Joe, I'm going to stick you on as a moderator too, if that's okay with you. Is that all right, Joe? I'll put you on as a moderator as well. That way, anybody comes up, you can try to beat Cuba in there. I think she'll probably beat you. She usually gets everybody before anything bad shows up. It's gone. What's Jim's favorite food? Well, there's actually when Joe said there's pizza and beer going to be down at his shop, that's probably one of my favorite things: pizza and beer. All right, I'm going to put Joe. Let me just go back to Joe over here. All right, Joe, you're a moderator now too. So if you see anything, try to be Cuba at it. I don't know if you're going to be able to, but you can head it off. So, all right, I think that's going to call it a night. Jamerson's, huh? Curious about the oil consumption question. I don't know what the oil consumption question was, but let me just go back. I'm looking, Rich. An issue. Was that question from you, Rich, or from somebody else? Okay, not really sure. All right, well, send me it was a 747, huh? I don't know who it was from, so if you want, you can email it to me, Rich on this Toyota, the consumption problem for Richard. Let's go back, Richard, huh? I'm looking, let me look for Richard. Usually an oil consumption problem is usually from, and I don't want to step on anybody's toes or insult anybody, but usually it's due to poor maintenance. Okay, here we go. Jim, I have a 2000 and Richard says, Jim, I have a 2007 Camry and I have found your videos extremely helpful. My question is, have you seen this year Camry have issues with oil consumption? Not so much the Camrys. Most of the time, the Camrys, if they have an issue, it's not the Camrys. The Corollas had a problem where the rings were bad in the Toyota Corollas, but on the older Corollas, they had a problem where the oil rings were no good and the vehicle would burn oil. Every Toyota Corolla that I ever worked on burned oil. As far as the Camry, no, I've never really seen any problems with the Camrys. Usually they don't burn any oil whatsoever. The only reason why a car would start to burn oil is usually because of not changing the oil frequently. And when you don't change the oil frequently, that does cause a problem inside as far as lubrication inside the engine, which then causes the rings to start to prematurely wear out. And, it is a problem. I will tell you this. I've had cars. One car's got 220,000 miles on it, and in between oil changes, which is 5,000 miles, it does not burn any oil, not even one drop of oil do I have to put into it. When I drain that oil out, it's right almost up to the full mark. So to answer your question, if the oil is changed frequently, usually the oil, it would not be burning the oil. It's not a very common, common problem. All right, I think we're going to call it night here. I know we have a couple of, Joe retracted something. Joe must have said something. So, all right. Well, I do want to thank everybody for stopping by tonight. Like I said, if anybody wants to talk to me about anything on the next live stream, send it to me in my email. It's the best way to find out any kind of questions. That way, we can discuss it on air and we can go through it. All right. But I want to thank you for stopping by and spending some of your Sunday evening here with me. Don't forget tonight you're going to have that lunar eclipse. I think it's at 10:30. If you're able to get out there and take a look at it and see what it looks like. Let's see what Joe had to say. Joe, good to see you. Good talking to you. I will cue you too. Good to see you here as well. I'm looking forward to getting together with everybody. Nat, I will be in touch with you, and we will get to have a burger and beer one day. But 10:30 is that lunar eclipse. Take a look at it if you're able to and see what it looks like. It should be interesting. And that's it. So we're going to call it an evening. So I just want to thank everybody for stopping by again. And as always, thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one.